boss man let me borrow his Rivian to go pick up our new scissor lift, and I figured I'd document it. So here we go. Instead of just sitting in a chair and talking at you, I figured I'd bring the boat along and we'll go fishing while we talk about the Rivian. Five things I learned while towing with the Rivian. Truck go fast, has tow hitch, powered by 2 million AA batteries, brakes are good for stopping, and the wheels are round. Thanks for checking out Medina Machines. Have a good night. Number one, 12,000 pound towing capacity. Should probably mention that the Rivian weighs 7,100 pounds. That's 7,100 pounds. That's 3.5 tons. It's a lot. Newest F-150 is like 10 or 11,000 pounds. I'll double check and put it down over here somewhere. 12,000 pounds towing capacity. The average person isn't going to tow 12,000 pounds. Thought this would be a good idea, a fun idea, but it's really becoming a pain in the ass. Leg cramp. Originally, I thought the Rivian was a unibody pickup, which isn't exactly wrong. It's unibody on frame. The frame skateboard is what contains all the suspension, the batteries, all the electronics to make it move. When you're towing with it, you really feel the weight moving around. Now, I don't know if it's because I purposefully added a little bit extra tongue weight to kind of see what the truck did, but it did buck a little bit when I was towing with it. EVs are not my usual fare, but I'm very happy to have this opportunity to drive this truck. Number two, adjustable suspension. So I did a little research on the suspension, and they are airbags. The airbag suspension in the Rivian has a hydraulic crosslink, kind of like a McLaren does. I did verify it is true. So there is, in a sense, some load leveling capability to the suspension, which is great if you're towing 3,000 pounds or 12,000 pounds. It will compensate as much as it can. Speaking of suspension, you have the ability to adjust your ride height on the fly, which is kind of cool. You can change different parameters like stiffness, height, responsiveness, which is all important if you're towing, right? I'm trying to keep my shades off so I don't look so cool while I'm doing this. They're transition lenses because I'm 35 and I don't need pit vipers. So I think, hit me up, Pit Viper, let's talk.
I've had a mullet my whole life. Take after my father, you know?
Imagine you have your trailer set to your towing height. You can drop the truck to its lowest setting, back under the trailer. We're dragging on the bottom, I think. Maybe it's a fish. You can back under the tongue of the trailer and then pick the trailer up with just the adjustable suspension. You still have to get out and hook it up and everything, but it makes a lot of sense if you're trying to do it nice and easy. You don't want to barely get the ball in the tongue and then have to sit there and shove the damn thing around like an idiot. The adjustable suspension makes it nice if you're hooking up a trailer, is what I'm saying. Number three, regen. You see that? If you can believe it, I got my crankbait stuck. So, Here's number 2. See if we don't lose this one also. These things get expensive when you do it this way. I should probably get out of the shallow spot before I put this out there, but it's fine. Number 3, regen. Something that it takes a lot of getting used to in this truck is the regenerative braking. You let off the gas and it stops for you. There's no coasting. It makes sense though. In the EV world, you want to be able to regen as much battery as you can for the sake of battery. I think the Rivian probably has one of the better regeneration systems out there right now. I was pleasantly surprised with how well the Rivian could regen lost power. We've got 105 miles left on our range. As you can see, we've got plenty of doodads and gizmos, but we're in towing mode. I have the ride set to stiff. I do notice the trailer. I think this truck is very sensitive to tongue weight. Where I have the scissor lift, I'm a little bit forward of the axles, maybe a little bit too far, because I definitely feel the 3,000 pounds that this scissor lift is. So we'll get going down the highway and we'll see what it's like. Every time you let off the throttle on the Rivian, it feels like you're braking. It automatically kicks the regen on. It slows you down quite a bit. I think that's a good thing because when you're towing with a trailer, you have weight behind you to push that regen. If you think about it, when you're towing, regenerative braking makes a lot of sense because you have weight behind the vehicle and it's going to push you, which is going to help with your regen. Of course, acceleration, you have more weight behind you, so you're going to burn more power trying to accelerate. That's a give and take. But I think that's the whole game with an EV, isn't it? It's just trying to find that balance of regen and power and figuring out what works. I don't know. With the R1T in economy mode, it will actually do very well even pulling a small trailer. We used our 16-foot car trailer to go pick up our scissor lift, and it worked out really well to just leave the truck in economy mode. There wasn't a whole lot of load on the truck to really affect how it drove in economy mode. So we just left it in economy mode while we towed the empty trailer 40 minutes away where we were picking up our scissor lift from. When you put it in towing mode, it cuts your range in half. Pulled over on the side of the road just to talk about it. We've got 105 miles left on our range. 86 miles of range, and we are back. Putting the address back into the GPS. It's a 30-mile trip, and we did it with 20 miles worth of range. Full disclosure, my daily driver is a TDI Jetta, so I'm very familiar with driving economically. You know, keeping it at 70, trying not to hit the brakes too much, kind of letting the vehicle coast, and then using as little throttle as possible. I think that has an effect on my outcome when I was towing compared to somebody like Hoovie's Garage, who the Ford Lightning that they used was awful, terrible, just miserable at towing. Another channel, the Fast Lane Truck. Now, I'm going to call them out. They made a video about an EV truck and just continuously bashed the Ford F-150 Lightning. I get it, makes better YouTube content. It gets more views, it gets more reaction, it gets more FaceTime, if you will. I am not sponsored. I borrowed the truck from my boss, who will probably see this video, but he knows that I will be honest about what I found with the Rivian, and that's why this is a good video. I'll say it right now, the Fast Lane Truck was sponsored by Sinclair when they made that video. How are you going to be sponsored by a gas station and then try to do an honest video about an EV, but the whole time they're doing the video about the EV, they're beating up on the EV? You can't do that. It's a conflict of interest. So again, this video is not sponsored. It's just me fishing and talking about a Rivian. Both the Fast Lane Truck and Hoovie's Garage just beat up on the Ford F-150 Lightning. I have zero experience with the F-150 Lightning. I don't know how the towing mode works, if there is a towing mode. My understanding is that it senses how much load, judging by how hard it has to try and drive. I guess it makes sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is the Rivian gives you the option to select economy mode or towing mode, and then you get to deal with whatever your mileage is then. Ultimately, the overall range is good. There's really no complaints I have about the range with the Rivian. I had the truck for about 4 hours. Oh, look at that sun. Everything's so dead looking here. Towing around town isn't so bad with it. If you're just putting around town, if you're moving from house to house, or you're helping somebody move, or maybe you have a race car, you know, you live 100 miles from the racetrack, you could absolutely tow a race car to the racetrack, hang out for the day, and then turn around and come home. That's perfectly doable with a Rivian. I don't see you towing, you know, 600 miles with it unless you did it in like 150, 200 mile stints. Maybe you're going to tow someplace for an overnight trip 200 miles away. It depends on the user. Typically, people aren't going to be towing hundreds of miles. How often does the average person really tow? They don't. Simple as that. They don't do it. Number 4, torque. Torque is obviously important when you're towing. You don't want to struggle to move your load. One thing to note was the lack of downshifting. Because it's an EV, there's no transmission, so you're not always downshifting to go up a grade. It just drives. And just in general, because of the weight of the Rivian, the torque of the motors, you don't have to put a whole lot of effort into making your load move. Getting on the highway is like nothing to it. They just put your foot in it and go. We're already doing 70. And I think I was only at like quarter throttle, so the thing definitely has a lot of torque. I know I keep saying it, torque wins races, right? This guy coming up on us here has a electric outboard motor. Let's see if we can chat with him for a second. That guy had zero interest in saying hi. I don't really understand that. Boating people are supposed to be friendly. At least acknowledge somebody, give a wave. One of them highfalutins with his... I guess that brings us to number 5. There are cameras everywhere. There's a top-down 360 view that I guess if you have kids or live in a neighborhood with a lot of kids, maybe you want to see everything that's around the truck. But the backup camera is nice, and it's positioned well enough to, like I said, hook up the trailer with the adjustable suspension. Just back in nice and low and pick up into the tongue of the trailer. After towing with the Rivian, I ended up with a lot of questions. Number 1 question I have is there runaway potential with the Rivian? Is it possible for the brakes to fail and you can't slow the truck down? How do you downshift it? Are you just hoping the emergency brake also works? What if you have a complete power loss and you're going downhill? Due to water, maybe? Number 2, how do you turn on cruise control? I guess I could probably Google that or maybe ask the owner. Shout out to Daryl, he's the one who let me borrow his truck. To be clear, it's one of those dumb little things, you know? Like what? I just drove the whole way there without it, is what it is, right? Number 3, if you're driving with the Rivian, you let off the gas and regen kicks in, do the taillights come on? Because obviously it's slowing you down with regen. So if it's regenerating, do you have to give consideration to the people behind you? If it's regenerating, does it kick on the taillights? And if it kicks on the taillights, does it trigger the trailer brakes to kick on, which takes away some of your regenerative capabilities? It's just food for thought. I don't know. Curious, comment down below if you have an answer for any of these. Final question is, how often would you tow more than 150 miles? Are you going to tow there and back in one day, 150 miles? The average person that's going to use a Rivian to go back and forth, you probably don't need it, do you? I had another thought about range. A lot of people are beating up on electric vehicles because of range. That's always the cheap shot, right? Everybody goes for range. There's not enough range. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You cannot drive the same distance that you could a fossil fuel driven vehicle. Consider this. If you have an EV, any of them, Tesla, Rivian, Aptera, doesn't matter. If you are going to buy an EV to commute to work, you're going to get 3 or 4 days without having to charge it. And then after 3 or 4 days, give it a charge. Think about it. I drive about 100 miles a day. I would probably have to charge it every 2 days. Or if I was lucky, maybe I could convince my boss to let me steal some electricity from work. That's another question. If you plug it in at work and you charge your EV at work, do you have to pay into the electric bill at your job because you drive an EV and you need to charge it at work? And if you're doing it all the time, aren't you going to add to the load? Food for thought. The Rivian R1T with its 7,100 pounds of weight, its 11,000 pound towing capacity, its 13-hour charge time at 220 volts. 13 hours to go to fully charge it. Now, I think that's from a nearly dead battery, so maybe you wouldn't charge it when it's fully dead. That's possible, right? And if you're not going to charge it when it's fully dead, then you don't have to worry about a full 13-hour charge. But I would imagine if, say, you come home, a lot of people are done with their day 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and they'll plug it in, and then they'll be back on the road at, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe earlier. My days earlier. Potentially somebody won't have to worry about the charge time as much. But I guess it all depends on how it fits into your life. Because I drive so much with my TDI, I have to take into account where I'm going to pick up diesel fuel. With some of you know, with a diesel, you want to be careful about where you pick up your diesel. And if you pick up your diesel from a small station that doesn't sell a lot of volume, then there's a possibility that you could get bad diesel and then you're going to have a bad time. That's just how it is. So if you pick up your diesel from a station that sells a lot of volume, less of a chance, in theory, to deal with having bad fuel. The important takeaway from that is, like an EV, you would have to consider when you're going to pick up fuel. I travel a lot for work, so tomorrow is Monday. Tomorrow I have to fly out for work. Thursday, on my way home from work, I was considering where to pick up fuel, which I was only at like 3/4 tank in my TDI. I probably could have left it until I had to go to the airport tomorrow, either stop on my way to the airport or stop on my way back from the airport when I got home in a few days. I don't want to do any of that when I'm tired and annoyed. So stopped at a big gas station, filled up with diesel because it was easy to do then. It's good to go. No bites on the crankbait yet, by the way. It is gorgeous out today, and I'm hoping that I can catch something at least. Though I've burnt most of my day talking to you guys, which I don't mind. I appreciate you stopping by, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment. Thanks for stopping by. How about you go out in your garage, you fix something, huh? Have a good night. Go figure, on the way in, caught this 3.5 pounder, 22 inches.
That's a nice fish.
That's a gorgeous fish, isn't it? That's big. He's skinny. Can you see that?
He's skinny, yeah.
He's very skinny, which is kind of odd for this time of year, but at least he's something, right?